Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the first round. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest fights of the year, if not possibly this decade, is happening tomorrow. And so I thought it'd be fitting for me to put my predictions in. Now, I'm only going to be doing my predictions for the co-main and main event, mostly because the rest of the undercard is just absolute trash. I mean, it's not trash, but let's be honest, Christian Millie's the only other fighter that you want to see here other than Canelo and Crawford. Anyways, let's not waste any more time and let's get into the predictions. For our co-main event, we have Christian Mbili versus Lester Martinez. Now, I've been eyeing Mbili for a good while now since the Derevchenko fight, mostly because he obviously resembles Mike Tyson. I mean, they've been literally calling him the French Mike Tyson, come on now. And honestly, his style is just so entertaining and satisfying to watch. As someone who enjoys punch output more than slick defensive boxing, this guy is really fun to watch, especially if you're a Tyson fan. Now, I don't really know much about Lester Martinez. The only reason why I actually know him is because he fought Ricardo Mayorga for his last fight. But from what I've seen, he's actually got some pretty decent power. But there are a few things that I've noticed from Lester Martinez. First of all, that god-awful ponytail. I mean, you look like Costa Jew, bruh. Second of all is his high guard, which I think is supposed to be a high guard. You might notice every time Lester Martinez guards, he puts his hands here instead of here. Meaning every time he puts this guard up, he's always getting hit in the temple. Combined with the fact that he always crouches down when he does this guard is a recipe for disaster when he fights Christian Mbili. I mean, all it takes is one bad temple shot, especially from a power puncher like Christian Mbili, and you're just done for. Now, he might not be that good defensively, but offensively, he's actually pretty decent. He also has some pretty good power, although maybe not to the level of Mbili's, and he can also put on some nice combinations at times. But I think Mbili's pressure is going to be too much, especially for the later rounds. Coupled with the fact that I think Mbili's actually trained his body to be more prepared for the later rounds, I mean, it just spells disaster for Martinez. So I personally have Christian Mbili by stoppage in the late rounds. Now we move on to the juicy bit. Canelo Alvarez versus Kendrick Lamar, Terrence Bud Crawford. Reportedly the third biggest fight in boxing behind Mayweather-McGregor and Mayweather-Pacquiao. Now, at first, it may just seem obvious, like, oh, Canelo's bigger. He's gonna bully Crawford. But ironically enough, since the pair's last fights, this actually seems a lot closer than you think. Now, I feel like I need to state the obvious here. Canelo has a massive advantage compared to Crawford, mostly because he spent pretty much half his fighting years fighting at middleweight and super middleweight, which means he's a lot more conditioned to the bigger weight classes compared to Crawford. Now that might make you think, oh, then he's obviously gonna win, right? Well, I guess to some extent, yes. It does kind of blow Crawford's chances out the window. But I feel like a lot of people are underestimating Crawford's abilities here. I mean, he's moving up 2 whole weight classes, technically 3 since he's only had 1 fight at super welterweight, to fight the undisputed champion at super middleweight. Now, Crawford's chances are obviously slim. Maybe not as slim as when the idea of a Canelo-Crawford fight was first, roaming around, but still pretty significantly low. But I feel like too much people are underestimating Crawford. Yes, he is moving up 2 weight classes to fight literally the undisputed champion. Yes, his last fight at super welterweight wasn't that dominant of a performance, but we need to remember that Crawford still has insane boxing IQ and skill. Arguably more skilled than Canelo. But the main question is, how far can those skills take you? I mean, considering that you're moving up 2 weight classes, your speed and agility is gonna dwindle down a lot. Especially now that Crawford's aging a lot. Combined with the fact that he's in unfamiliar territory, kinda creates this recipe for disaster for Crawford. But if he is able to create the perfect game plan and utilize his skill and IQ against Canelo effectively, I actually think Crawford would be able to win by decision. Emphasis on decision, alright? There's no way you're knocking out Canelo Alvarez, like, come on. Like, you'd have to have the power of Deontay Wilder, or even Julian Jackson to have even the slightest chance of knocking out Canelo. Listen, if Triple G couldn't, what makes you think Crawford would? But honestly, I'd say the same also goes for Canelo. I mean, you could stun him temporarily, or get a knockdown by sending him off balance, but there's no way you're actually gonna hurt Terrence Crawford. Now, granted, he hasn't really fought much power punchers. I'd say Kavaliauskas was one of the biggest punchers he fought, but other than that, I just don't think Crawford would let Canelo punch him. I mean, obviously, it's boxing. Why would you let somebody hit you? I think he's gonna try and maintain the distance as long as he could. And by the time Canelo finds the rage, I feel like it's just gonna be too late to deal any significant damage to Crawford. But who knows? It's a sport boxing. Maybe you could get put out in one shot, and maybe you couldn't. But personally, I think it's rare that we see a knockout on both sides. Crawford because Canelo has a granite chin, and Canelo because Crawford is able to move around a lot. But now let's talk about Canelo's cons. Not just cons. Now, Canelo is known for his power and his setup and selection of punches. Oh yeah, and his absolutely elite head movement. But I feel like the main problem with Canelo throughout most of his career has been his footwork. Now, he doesn't have bad footwork, but I feel like the main purpose of his footwork is just like hunt down opponents, and I guess just focusing more on sitting down on shots to get as much power out of them as possible. But I feel like Canelo has a bit of a problem with cutting off the ring, which was very prevalent in the William Skull fight. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, William Skull's just treating the ring like a track and field. But that's gonna be a huge problem against Crawford. Because again, Crawford's main attribute in this fight is his boxing IQ and skill, which includes elusive footwork. So I feel like that's going to be a massive problem for Canelo if he's not able to think of a good answer for it. But if Canelo is able to put the pressure on Crawford, I feel like Crawford's going to slow down a bit and Canelo's going to be able to get his licks in, which is why I personally think Canelo's going to win by decision. I think for the first few rounds, Crawford's going to have the edge on Canelo because of his elusiveness. But I feel once Canelo starts really digging into Crawford, I think he's going to slow down a lot, and I think Canelo's going to seal the later rounds. But that's pretty much my take on the main and co-main event for Canelo Crawford. I'd like to see your predictions and comments and why you think that's going to happen. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this new series, and I'll see you all in the next video.